Hi.
Hi, Moni.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Pretty good. Not quite 10 out of 10, but pretty good.
Who are you?
Who am I? I'm Brendon Kinch.
Why you have this sexy voice?
My mum gave it to me.
Uh-huh.
It's hereditary. And it's basically the only thing I have.
Where are you from?
I am from New Zealand, the land of the long white cloud. That's actually... Do you know the Māori name that most people don't know is Aotearoa, which means the land of the long white cloud, because it used to be covered entirely with like temperate rainforest. Yeah, and then the humans showed up and cut most of it down. So now it just rains all the time.
Oh, for me, it's the land of fucking ships.
Yeah, that is true. Somebody out there is doing that. More than somebody, I imagine. I mean, I don't have any experience personally with that, but I'm sure that if you've got 5 million people and 40 million sheep, then you know somewhere along the lines, the line between sheep and Homo sapien kind of blurs, and then I'm just happy that like they can't make like hybrid babies. How crazy would that be?
I don't think across species you can make babies.
No, you can't. I think you can't across species, but you can within the same genus. So like that's why dogs can make babies with wolves, because they belong to the same genus. Species, it's still possible. But on the other hand, yeah, because humans and chimps don't belong to the same genus.
Okay.
But we can, so we can't make babies. But Neanderthals and humans belong to the same genus. Neanderthals, they're like ancient form of human. They're like...
Okay, but they don't exist anymore.
No.
So there's no chance they can make babies.
Well, no, we did. And
okay.
Asians and Europeans, we have like up to 4% of our DNA is from the Neanderthals because we fucked.
Oh.
Yeah, we did, yeah. And also some other types of humans. So that's possible. So like me right now, I'm not like fully Homo sapien. I've got different DNA from different other humans. And I imagine you do as well. The only ones who don't are sub-Saharan Africans because they never left Africa.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So enough of
Yeah.
very informative, and is that why you? Is that how you were brought to Germany?
No, I got that from a YouTube video I watched a few days ago. But what brought me to Germany was there was this computer game called Civilization, and it has like it's from like 1992. So I started playing it when I was like 6 in 1996, and it's got like 16 of the most high-profile civilizations ever, and around about the same, like, so I got obsessed with playing that, and about the same time my mum took me to the library for the first time, like the city library, and obviously that's before the internet, so I got like hooked on books about like history and culture and like castles and how humans migrated around the world. And because in New Zealand most of the people are immigrants, so they all come from other places. So, but on the other hand, New Zealand is at the edge of the world. It's like basically the furthest country. It was one of the last land masses that were ever settled by humans. So it's like way in the middle of nowhere. So you can see the outside world through like TV and books, but plane tickets are really expensive and you just have to daydream about it. So I just became obsessed with the outside world, and because my dad's English, I heard some of his traveling stories from the days when he was in the army and stuff like that. And so I got like really interested in it. I always wanted to travel, and I always wanted to like, I thought it was so crazy when I heard people speaking other languages. Like, I just, it was just so fascinating. And then I thought, one day I'm gonna get the hell out of here. And I'm gonna go explore and meet these people, and like, I always wanted to like learn another language. So when I was like 22, I started traveling. So I traveled for like 7 years, where I just basically like, I lived in Australia and I would just save money, because you could make a lot of money in Australia doing really easy work. And then I would just like buy a ticket and go traveling. So I was wandering around Australia and I met this German guy and we became like really good friends. So he invited me to Berlin, and he was like, "Come to Berlin, it'll be awesome." And then I showed up in like July of 2014, and I had the craziest summer of my life. Like lots of, I'll admit, like people won't be surprised by this, but like a lot of hedonism and debauchery, just some of the most crazy fun I've ever had. Kind of like that level of fun that can kill you if you're not careful. You know, like you can have too much fun and like wind up dead or something. Yeah, so things, we were all friends and we all looked after each other, but like it was so much partying, my God. I remember the first time I went to Berkheim, and my friend was like, yeah, it'll be fun, come along. And we don't really have clubs in New Zealand.
Oh.
Or like they exist, but it's not the same thing at all. You know, it's like a really crappy bargain bin version. So we're at Berkheim, and I remember seeing like the line, and I was like, why are there so many? There was like literally like 400 people lined up to go into this club, and I was like, is it really that cool? And my friend got me in on the guest list, and everyone was like, everyone I've told this story to, like all the other travelers and club people, whatever, they were like, wait, the first time you ever went to a club, you were on the guest list at Berkheim? And I was like,
Guest list?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, and I wasn't even really aware of what it meant. I was just like, oh, it looks like we're walking past the whole line. Like I was painfully naive. And yeah, man.
And then that's why you stayed?
Yeah. So I fell in love with the place, and then because I was on a tourist visa, it expired, and I had to I went back to Australia. And then I started learning German with like Duolingo, and like I had no idea what the hell I was doing. It was basically just self-taught. And then it took like 3 years to get to the point where I could kind of fumble my way through a conversation. Like it was straight up painful. Yeah, but I was always curious about the other cultures of the world. And New Zealand is painfully boring, to be honest with you. Like if you don't like the great outdoors, then you see people who are like 27 acting like 50-year-olds.
But they have good outdoor landscapes, right?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
But the problem is that when you have to work like a 40-hour week and do like the normal things that people have to do, you can't really get the most out of it unless your job is based around tourism or something like that.
We never really talked before. We met each other at the Berlin comedy thing. You are a comedian? Oh, surprise! Yeah. And then you came to my storytelling show. You told a really crazy like OG story. And you were like so excited. You were like, I just come out from 6 months of depression. I'm happy to see the world. And I was like, wow, amazing, come to my podcast.
Yeah, I actually was told about your podcast from my therapist.
Really?
Yeah, because he's involved in this, oh God, I can't remember the name, but there's like this thing that you all have, that all these people have to give these therapists or something, and they put all their information there. It's like some kind of platform. Really bad time to forget the name of it. But here we are. So and he was like, yeah, there's this woman, Moni, and I was like, oh, Moni, yeah, I know her from comedy, what the hell? And then...
Your therapist know me?
I don't know if he knows you, but he knows of your existence.
I'm acknowledged by a therapist?
Yeah, because he told me that you were doing this podcast, or that it existed on this platform that he was on. And he was like, yeah, it's pretty cool, I listened to it. And I was like, that's Moni.
Fuck! Oh my God!
Yeah.
Hey, doctor, contact me. Oh, thank you for promoting my podcast. I really thought that my only audience is Franco, who's my friend.
Yeah, I can actually give you his contact after the thing, because he's actually a really good therapist. He's the one that helped me dig myself out of this.
Okay, hey, doctor, like contact me. Yeah, thank you for promoting me. Oh, I'm so happy I have audience. Yeah. Oh wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, so basically what happened was the depression thing didn't really last like 6 months. It's basically been on and off since as long as I can remember. And like so depression and anxiety together. And I've basically been trying to get help with it my whole life by talking to people about it, or like you know, self-medicating with drugs and alcohol and generally bad decisions. Which
alcohol is very bad for depression.
yeah, for sure, but it takes your mind off the pain for a while. And because people are like, why don't you just face your problems? And it's like, I'm doing that and I'm getting my ass kicked. So I just don't want to feel like shit right now. So what am I going to do? And yeah, so I mean, I've always had this problem. And when you're anxious about things, like it was so bad when I was like 17 or 18 that I would be anxious all the time, and it's like the adrenaline was running through my body all the time. I'd just be walking down the street and I'd just start vomiting in the bushes because I was like freaking out to that degree. And I felt like I was alone with it and no one else felt the same. Since I've gotten older, I've learned that we're all like on the crazy train to some degree. So then in my mid-20s, it got to the point where I was like, if I can't fix this, I'm going to go play in traffic or something, because I don't want to live like this anymore. Because the problem with it is that when you're anxious about everything, like all you're left with in life is like all the shitty parts, because when you get something good in your life, you're like, wow, this is cool. And then you think,
How about tomorrow?
It would be a shame if something would have happened to it, and then I wouldn't have it anymore, and then I'd feel bad about that. And then when you have something bad in your life, you're like, wow, how much worse can this get? And when you've had a lot of shitty experiences in life, you're like, wow, the bottom of the pool is actually pretty deep, and I haven't touched the bottom yet. So
what you just said has potential. Write it down. I think this kind of voice can really resonate with other anxious people.
Yeah, this voice that, like, I don't know like what it's like for other people aside from schizophrenics, but I have this conversation in my head with myself where I'm trying to understand what's going on. And I think I've invented a character for the anxiety.
That's very good. I read a book about dealing with your inner voice. Inventing a character is a very good way of dealing with your voice.
Yeah, it allows you to kind of like work through whatever is freaking you out, and then as if you were talking to a friend.
Yes, and also because of inner voice, like they are very irrational, very repeating, like say, you're a piece of shit, you're a piece of shit, you're a piece of shit. If you try to avoid it, you try to don't look at it, then this voice will keep repeating, you're a piece of shit. But when you start to give it a look, give it a character, and you say, okay, why you say I'm a piece of shit? And the other voice start to describe, and do you like, I don't think you are rational. Let me try to talk with you. Then the more you talk with this voice, the more you realize what the statement they claim is not rational, then it's good. But when you don't talk with them, they just keep repeating, you're a piece of shit, you're a piece of shit. And then over time it becomes a fact. It becomes a truth.
And it's always like this in the background, like you're trying to go through the day, and there's always this.
And then there's also a very good advice. They say make a character about it, and joke about it, and make joke with it. And the more you ridiculate it, the more you joke about it, the less credential the voice has, the less you fear, oh, this voice can control you. It's just like. For example, have you watched Scary movie?
Yeah, but a long time ago.
Yeah, like for example, like a scary movie, when the deaths come out, like you can choose to be scared, you can choose to avoid, but you also can choose like smoke a joint with it and make fun of it. And once you smoke a joint with death, then you don't afraid of him anymore.
I remember the scene. Yeah, when you stop giving it like so much power.
Yeah.
Like. Because your mind comes up with these crazy scenarios, and if you believe every single one of them, life just becomes this never-ending nightmare, and you lose control quite quickly. And I found, like, I would have these conversations with myself, but before I learned this technique, I would just feel like shit all the time, and I'd be really nervous about everything, and I'd worry about everything, and I wouldn't want to like do anything that could possibly rock the boat in my life. Because I'm like, it would, it has the potential to make everything worse. So, but eventually when I like sold all my stuff and went traveling, I was like, I'm going to face this fear, and maybe that will be the way of fixing it. If I fill my life with as much chaos and unpredictability as much as I can, this will fix it. It didn't work. It just made it worse. So I had all this like, it just got stronger and stronger, and then yeah, and like depression kicks in because you don't want to get out of bed. I'm tired of being awake, because when I'm awake I feel like shit, and it happens all the time. And then people give me like this advice, like I was thinking about this a few days ago, and people have told me two things which are the most common thing throughout my life when I've told them my problems. They've told me it could be worse, or look on the bright side. And I'm like, the whole like, it could be worse. I'm like, this logic's bullshit. Would you go to a slum in India, find some homeless kid with like a raging glue addiction, and be like, hey man, you could be a child soldier in Somalia right now, so maybe you should just take your problems and fuck off. You know what I mean? Like, is that where you're gonna go with it? Like, people's problems are valid. Like, I'm sitting here and I'm like feeling like shit for years. It's not like I just made this up because.
When is the first time would you realize, oh, maybe I'm depressed, or maybe I have issues?
I was about nearly 11.
11.
Yeah.
And it's like you realize it, or your parents told you, or?
No, I remembered having this feeling of being like, I remember thinking like, everything's really stressful. I'm constantly worried about what could happen in my life. And everything just looks bleak, and it just looks, because I think like after my parents split up, things in my life got pretty crazy. I won't go into detail, but when you're a kid and you're like dealing with that, and you don't really have the skills to deal with it, and no one's really helping you, because most of the time people like didn't know I had a problem. It was actually, I had this maths test when I was in primary school, the last year of primary school, which is elementary school. And I remember I failed this test really badly because I had no idea what the hell long division was. And we were multiplying fractions. And I was like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I failed this test really bad. And one of the teachers was like, I just think you're not trying hard enough. And I was like, if I wasn't trying hard enough, I probably would have got like 50 or 60%, but I got like 14%. What the hell if you're so smart, like, and I found a lot of the authority figures were also like kind of, most of them were just really incompetent. Like, they didn't realize I had a problem, even though it was really obvious. And I just felt like I was alone with it, and that was pretty depressing.
How is the mental health situation culture there in New Zealand? Do people talk about it? Do people go to see therapists normal? And like, for example, in school, do teachers care about your mental health and your family? Do they think it's something they need to help you?
Well, I think so. When I was a kid in the 90s, there was the change from this. We used to have like the mentality of like, harden up. Like, just grow some balls and get over it. Because the previous generations went through crazy shit, like 2 world wars, depression, the Vietnam War, like all sorts of craziness. And they got through that by just like hanging on and going to work every day and just getting it done. So that was the mentality. And then that started to change when the New Zealand government noticed that they had a massive problem with youth suicide. And particularly a lot of young men, like, not even just suicide, but like really self-destructive behavior, like, like gang behavior, petty crime, drink and drugs, drunk driving was a big one, knife crime, shit like that. So the government realized they had a pretty big problem, and then they started this this media campaign where they got famous rugby players. Like, rugby is like our sport, and they got all these like famous rugby players to be like, it's okay to seek help and blah, blah, blah. But still, if I was to say to somebody, oh yeah, I'm going to see a therapist, it would be on the same level as I'm an alcoholic and I punched my wife last night. It would be like one of those, holy shit, man, you've got a problem. people would probably freak out. But
Do you mean it was then or still now?
well, when I left, it was like 10 years ago, so that was the attitude then. And yeah, there's a lot of people like that still now. Like those habits or those thought patterns don't really change unless people want them to. Because I was never one of those, oh, harden up, you'll be okay type people. I was always like, shit, I've got a problem. If I don't fix this, it's going to destroy my life and destroy my relationships with me.
And when is the time you start to associate yourself with the word depression?
This is the interesting thing, because I realized I had a problem quite young, but I didn't actually realize it was depression until much later, until probably just like 2 years ago or something. But anxiety, I could recognize that from, probably like my late teens. Like when you're walking down the street and you just randomly vomit in a bush because you're like nervous. Then you realize that this is a problem. But depression, I always felt depressed, but I to me, like, to be honest, there's a point where it actually feels normal. You don't really, like, you wake, it's like, I've always felt like this. This is just life. And it seems crazy now, but at the time, I didn't even realize that it was anything abnormal in terms of the depression department.
I totally can resonate with it. I had a big depression three years ago, knocked me out of work for 1 year. And I went to therapist. She asked me, why are you depressed? I said, oh, because my dating life was bad. And then I went there, over years, I realized, oh, it's actually, dating is just the tip on the iceberg. I realized I was depressed since I have the memories. And I just didn't know.
Yeah, when it feels normal, it's like, it's just normal. It's amazing what you can kind of just adapt to and get through every day without really thinking about it.
And with, in New Zealand, now or in the past, would people ever say, oh, I'm depressed?
I never heard anybody say it. And I had friends who had raging drug problems, or people that were kicked out of home really young by their parents. And one guy who nearly committed suicide, he was at the planning stage. But no one ever said dude, Brendon, man, I'm depressed. I don't remember that happening once.
This is shocking to know, because growing up, I always thought New Zealand is a very developed country. It's like Switzerland in my mind. Everyone has a good protection. This is really shocking to know.
Yeah, New Zealand, I've talked to a lot of New Zealanders about life in New Zealand, and there's a lot of things that we agree on, but there's also a lot of things that, depending on your socio-economic level, you're going to have a very different experience. Say if you were raised poor, really poor in New Zealand, then it's like everywhere else, really poor in the States, crime, drug addiction, broken homes, that's pretty universal. The level of governmental corruption is pretty low because we have a low population, so it's harder to hide your corruption. So, there's things like that which are good, and we look after the environment to a degree, but there's a lot. I think the thing about New Zealand is that, like I've said before, half of our economy is based on tourism, and we also get a lot of money from foreign students. So we don't really want to scare anybody off. But the reality of the situation when you actually live there is a low to middle income earning family. It's not that good. Cost of living's pretty high, and what you get for your money's not that good in terms of housing and whatever.
Wow. So when you have mental issues, is there for example, health care to cover you for you to get through treatment?
If you can prove that you're disabled, you get what they call the sickness benefit, which is just welfare. So if you can't work, the government pays you money, but you have to really prove it.
Okay.
So if you're in a mental institution, then yeah, you're good. Or if you're on medication and you're recovering at home or whatever because you had an episode or something, then yeah, it'll be okay. But if you're just the other thing is most people don't really try to even engage with these services because even admitting that you have a problem is like really hard in the first place.
So it's not a society like not yet like maybe Britain or Europe that are a bit more open on this topic.
Yeah, well, I mean, from what I've seen from people, I don't think so, because it's sort of like things were this whole like just get on with it, just do what you have to do and get through the day thing. That mentality's been handed down because the original like European settlers who arrived in New Zealand, the ones from Britain and Ireland, there were these companies there which sold parcels of land. They were like, yeah, dude, I've got this sweet parcel of land. You basically just have to show up, build your house, and you're good. It turned out to be complete bullshit. By the time these people got to New Zealand, this parcel of land was a forest. So they had to cut it down. And they're like big tropical hardwood trees. So it was like crazy job, and people were like dying. They get like dysentery and people having like miscarriages on the boat on the way over. Like it's brutal. And then so they're doing that, and then they're having wars with the Maori and the native people, and then there's the First World War. So it's every generation had like this severe challenge to deal with. So that got passed on down the generations. So even my generation now, so I was born in 1990, so I even feel weird about doing this podcast right now. Being like, yeah, I had times when I was depressed, and I didn't notice how I didn't even say, oh, I would kill myself. No, it was, oh, I'll play in traffic, because somehow like admitting it like that is just this thing you just don't do.
What plan traffic?
Play in traffic, like I will go and walk in front of a bus. That's what that means.
Okay.
So,
wow, your country has a saying for this, like.
We just have like things that we, what is it like? Oh yeah, go jump off a bridge or something like that, or like.
Well, that sounds like a wild west, like.
Yeah,
quite a primitive. Yeah.
No, it's I don't know. Sometimes I think I'm giving like a wrong impression of New Zealand because I grew up in some pretty hard circumstances. But it's basically if you were born into like a certain socioeconomic level, that's your New Zealand you're going to get. And the guy whose family is earning $30,000 more a year is going to have a very different experience because of access to resources and everything, and the whole like privilege thing. But so what I'm saying is about like even admitting that you have a problem. Like I would feel really weird about it, but maybe it's different now because the generation that came after me, the government was like, yeah, if you've got a problem, seek help. It's not too late to ask for help. And there's like there's this crisis line phone number and the hotline if you're going to kill yourself and stuff like that. So maybe it's different now, but.
So over the years, with your anxiety issue, did you get any help? Were you? How did you survive?
Yeah, how did I survive? Like, how did I get through it? I always believed that it would get better. I always thought, I'm going to fix this. That was kind of the key problem in my mentality. I thought it was something that had to be fixed, but it was basically, I had a very difficult relationship with my past in childhood. But what actually got me through was I would constantly arrange challenges for myself. Like for 7 years, I would come to Europe, spend all my money traveling and stuff, then go back to Australia and have like $80 in my bank account, and then race myself to see how fast I could get a job. So I would get a job sometimes in like 2 days or a day and a half or something.
So you live like on the edge, like there's no tomorrow.
Yeah, and I felt like I didn't really have anything to lose. So I didn't have like some kind of job or like a house or anything. So I didn't have anything to lose, and I just went exploring. I was like, I'll just go exploring because any kind of major commitment to life is far too terrifying. So that's, I think, how I got through it. And I always had really good, like once I came to Germany, I had friends who really tried to help me. Like they talked me through things, or Actually, the best time was in 2016. Me and some friends went to Madagascar, and I had like, not like a meltdown, but I had this pretty crazy anxiety. We're in this town called Morondava, which is like on the coast, and I have this fear of deep water because I had like a few like near drowning episodes when I was a kid, and I don't like deep water. Swimming pools are okay, but like rivers and lakes and beaches, no. So, and I was like, we're at the beach, and I was embarrassed about being anxious about getting in the water. And most of the time I just spent by myself, like reading or whatever, and then my friends were like, what's wrong, man? Like, why don't you want to come in the water? And I was like, this is kind of stupid, but I'm straight up terrified of the water. And there's a big list of things that I'm terrified of. And they were like, you know, because for a lot of people, when you're anxious all the time, it's really annoying for them. So you kind of like try to hide it, or you're ashamed of it, because no one wants to hear that shit 24/7.
Yeah.
So, and my friends were like, look, we love you anyway. Yeah, you have like your problems, but to us, it's, you know, it can be annoying at times.
That's really nice.
Yeah, and then at that moment I was like, okay, like, and then they walked me through this meditation we were doing, where I finally developed a technique to talk myself down from being anxious. And then I felt like I could finally get back control. Well, get control, because I don't think I really ever had control. So like for the first time in my life, I could get control over this problem. And then, so that's when I was 26. So that was like 5 years ago. And that, once I had that small little victory, that's when it started to, like, I never let go of that. Like, even in the shittiest times, I was like, okay, I did it once. So I had this time, so things are going to change.
I think it's like a tunnel. It's like before you break through, it's all dark. But once, as long as you see the sunlight, then you will have the faith that no matter how dark it is, like as long as you walk on it, eventually you will see sunlight again.
Yeah.
Yeah, like hope.
And like the shitty times can't last forever. Like if you have a really rainy day and it's like raining the whole day, and I think like, there's no way that there's enough water up there for this to carry on forever. So when I'm having a really shitty day, I'm like, yeah, okay, today sucks, just go to bed, and tomorrow will be better, because this level of shittiness can't be maintained consistently. Like, it can't possibly maintain this. So, and things kind of go in an up and down kind of way. And often I just get to the point where I'd worry myself into circles, where I'd get to the point where I was like, wow, all of a sudden I don't care. And I have this strangely freeing, euphoric moment where I'll be like lying in bed being like, what the fuck, I don't even care anymore, this doesn't scare me. And I was thinking like, this is probably a sign that I definitely need help. But actually how it happened was I found, okay, so first of all, like I found this therapist in like January 2020. And I just went to this room with him, we talked, sat there just complaining about all of my bullshit. And then he didn't really give me any strategies or anything to work with, and I just kind of I was like, I just paid €40 for that. I feel worse now. I should have just smoked a joint and like drank like 5 beers, and I probably would have felt better. You know, like why didn't I? And then so that went on for a while, but the dude was trying to help, but it just wasn't a good match. And you know, they say with therapists you should shop around, because there's a wide variety of approaches. And then so the COVID lockdown happened, and that got really bad. It was just so depressing and annoying. I was like getting some momentum in comedy, like doing shows pretty frequently, and I wanted to start my own open mic. And just as I was looking at venues, like I had no idea what the hell I was doing. I don't know how you start your own open mic. I was just gonna like crash course my way through it. And then the lockdown happened. And I was just like, oh Jesus, like all the things that made life worth living, all of a sudden weren't there, and I was just left with my bullshit. Yeah, and then I started getting depressed, and then toward the end of the summer, I had like one really bad week of being anxious, and my friend was like, look, I don't know how to help you with this. This is pretty extreme. You have to have another try at finding a therapist, otherwise this isn't going to improve. It's going to get worse. And then so I was actually at this, when there was a relaxation in the lockdown during the summer, I was at a friend's birthday, and he was pretty wasted. He'd been like, you know, like getting wrecked for a number of days. And I was talking to a friend of mine, and I was telling her about some of the experiences I've had in my life, and I was like, explained to her, I was like, it's so interesting the level of variety of things that scare people and other things that don't scare other people. I was explaining to her, I was like a few years ago when I was traveling, we were drinking one night, and this guy pulled out a knife and threatened to stab me to death, like this really long knife.
Where was it?
This was in Australia.
Oh.
And I wasn't really that scared or worried.
You were like, yeah, finally.
I was like, thanks, man, you're doing all the hard work for me. Now my parents won't have to wonder what happened. You know, what could we have done for him? And so he pulled out this knife and he was going to stab me. And I wasn't that terrified. We resolved the situation, but the point is that this situation didn't freak me out that much. Then I had other situations where, like, there was a guy in the street and he was like screaming at this woman, and I told him to like fuck off. This was like over near Gurley here in Berlin, and he was like threatening to kill me, like I'm gonna cut your head off and stuff like this. And I wasn't worried then as well. Like for a lot of people that would be a pretty extreme trauma, those two things. And then just as I was telling you the story, we went back into the flat, and one of my friends, the guy who'd been getting wasted for a couple of days, fell over and hit his head. He just blacked out because he had been getting, like, because he just needed to go to bed basically, and he hit his head. And I walked over to him, I picked his legs up and put them on the chair so that the blood would go back into his brain, because he like blacked out because he stood up really quickly. And he woke up and he was all like, his face was pale, his lips were blue, and we put like ice behind his neck and blah blah blah, and we kind of like brought him back. And then we went and sat outside again. I was like, see, that situation that just happened there, like our friend could have got like a terrible brain injury, that didn't really frighten me. But for example, if I was to get like, I don't know, like a letter from one of like the Amts here in Berlin, these bureaucratic letters that I can't really read, I like see the letter and it's like Finanzamt or like blah 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 Amt, and I'm like, oh my God. And I start like, I can feel the adrenaline running, like I'm like someone's about to fight me or something. What should have been happening in all these other situations but didn't. So I was like, why am I freaking out right now? This is just, you know, you read the letter and it's like, we are writing this letter to tell you something you already know. And that's basically it. And then I was like, why am I freaking out? Like, I'm having a full-on like fight or flight response here. What the hell is this? And then she was like, oh, my boyfriend's a therapist, maybe he can help you with that. And then that's how the whole thing started.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And but these weird situations, like everybody is so individually different. I knew a guy who had bipolar disorder. One day he was really excited about making bagels for breakfast, but he bought the wrong bag of bagels. So instead of getting 2 4-packs, he bought 1 6-pack, and there were 4 of us. And he was like, no, but you're supposed to have 2 each. You're supposed to have 2 bagels each. Like, this isn't right. We can't allow this. It started like freaking out. He was like, went outside and was like sitting on the porch, just like sitting there, like crying, lit a cigarette, and was like, what the fuck? And I was like, holy shit. Yeah. But then you talk to other things. Yeah, it was crazy. But you talk to him about other things and he's like, yeah, it doesn't bother me. Or he would even accuse you of being a pussy for being scared. It's like, nah, dude, come on. Who was the guy crying over the bagels 2 weeks ago? But that's the thing. There's no like, it's not linear. Things affect people, and human beings are so complex that anything can be a trigger.
I think it's good that you hang out with people also have some sort of issues, because then you understand each other, because he cries over bagel and you cries over letters. When dealing with totally mentally healthy people, sometimes it's frustrating, because they were like, hey, why are you in bed? Just get up. Yes, yeah.
Just cheer up.
Don't waste your time. Don't waste your time for depressed.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah,
It'll be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God, this used to drive me crazy.
So they don't understand. It's not about the reality. It's not about the situation. It's about how your brain is wired, how you react to the situation, and you cannot explain that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
you know it's irrational sometimes.
Yeah, most of the time it is irrational. I've had moments where I've been thinking like, this is like the 95% of things I've ever worried about that won't actually happen, but it feels real. When you're having like an anxious episode, your brain starts telling you all kinds of bullshit that's really convincing. And you start like believing it, and then you start acting on it.
How do you, when or how did you realize, oh, what your brain is telling you is not the reality? Did you make the distinguish like from day one, or it took you some time to realize actually this is just anxiety and it's not the reality?
Sometimes I can make the distinction, then other times, like a month ago, I had an anxious episode. My brain tricked me, and I fucking believed it. And I wouldn't go into
what?
It's kind of stupid, but it was basically about like this like this residency bureaucratic bullshit, and I was like in the middle of the lockdown still, and I was like been wrestling with this whole, wow, there's no COVID in New Zealand, I could just go home because this sucks. And then what was it? It was something about like my residency thing, and I was like, I didn't think I would, like I have an interview in like a year, and I was like, oh, I don't think it'll satisfy the requirements, maybe I should just go home now, and then instead of getting like declined for the thing. And then it was just this like, just ran around and around in my head, and then there's a point where I started like, okay, we need to talk this over. And then I started talking to the voice, because I've been trained to talk to it like it's like a kid that comes crying to you. If you're just like, nah, dude, it's cool, like, yeah, it'll be fine. Then this kid with a broken leg is like, no. And then it starts crying louder and then you start having more craziness in your mind. But yeah, so I started talking myself down. It took like a week, and I eventually got there. But there are other times when I know I'm like, this is clearly bullshit, man. Whatever I'm telling myself right now no, it's bullshit.
Do you write a diary?
A diary? I've been recommended doing this, but I don't know why. But I don't like it.
It really helps. Like I don't write like a journal. I write morning pages. It's similar concept, but I like it better because when I think about writing journal, it's like, oh, what I did, I needed to write a coherent story or whatever, and I think that's very stressful. And with morning pages, the concept is similar, but it's a stream of consciousness writing. So you don't care about the outcome. You just write whatever comes to your mind, the first thought in your mind, and you just write. And in the middle of a sentence, if your mind wanders, then you write something else. And the only requirement is that every day you need to write 3 pages. I think it's way less, of requirement you can. It's an easier requirement for you to overcome mentally to start it. And I feel it's really good for dealing with the voices. Because when you write, you're like, yeah, I'm thinking this, but is this really true? Why I'm thinking this? Yeah, and it helped me a lot.
I think that I should probably start doing that, because I've had times when I've messaged my problems to my friends about what I'm freaking out about, and then I've read the text message and be like, really, man, this is complete bullshit.
Yeah.
This is a total fantasy I've made up in my mind. And this is ruling my day right now, and then tomorrow it'll be some other bullshit.
Yeah. With morning pages, you are not even supposed or not even recommended to read it. You just write it, and then close it. Don't look at it. And I'm doing this for 3 months now. I really can see the changes in me. And I also recommended it to my boyfriend. He doesn't have mental issues, but I could see, like, when he writes it, his mood during that period is way much better.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So is it like just a general reduction of the white noise?
Yeah. It's basically like there are some thoughts in the back of your mind, and keep running the program, keep running, and when you write it down, you dump it like a trash, and then it's not in the back anymore.
Yeah, I should definitely
because you have all the voice, so I think probably it will work for you.
Yeah, for me it's like this internal monologue
Yeah.
that just won't shut the hell up.
Yeah.
And then it has arguments with other internal monologues.
Yeah, if like every morning you write the monologues out, then probably you can feel lighter during the day.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because on like a day-to-day basis, I feel like good for the first time in my life, like consistently good. I wake up in the morning and I'm like, oh, before it was like, shit, I'm awake, how to dodge today's problems. But now I'm like, oh yeah, cool. I wake up today and I have this, this and this that I should do, and I can go and do that. And then this will be nice. And then I'll sleep again.
Oh, I'm so happy for you.
And like, it's pretty sweet. Like, I don't feel like shit all the time. I like felt like shit every day of my life until recently. And then, yeah, like.
I have a question. You said you didn't realize you were depressed until like 2 years ago. What happened 2 years ago?
I started to realize that there's something more than anxiety. Like, I had moments where I felt terrible, and I was like, I've had this feeling for a while, where I just feel really sad about a lot of things, and that's not anxiety, so what is it, and why do I have it all the time? And also, I had this habit where I didn't really get out of bed in the morning. So like, even if I'd had 8 hours sleep, I would still find a way of staying in bed because I didn't want to be conscious.
That's a very bad habit for mental health.
Yeah, and now I just sleep like maximum 8 hours, and I just get out of bed and like, okay, I slept, I do stuff now. So I think that was the point I realized I was depressed as well, because I saw other people who had depression and they described their symptoms, and I was thinking, shit, that's actually, I can relate to a lot of that list. And then I thought, shit, this is what it is. Yeah.
I think I like to talk with people about their mental illness or their issues, this kind of, how do you say, aha moment. I have this.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, it's a very positive experience, because once you realize, aha, that's what I have, then following the solutions. Because when you don't know what's the issue, then you don't know how to fix it.
Yeah.
And I think one of my favorite aha moment is one of my colleagues, he told me in the past he was a alcoholic, and he didn't know it until he went to his first AA meeting. He's like, wow, everything makes sense now. Then he finally able to piece everything together in his past. And he's like, wow, this is the best, how do you say, revelation in his life. And everything makes sense from then.
Yeah.
Because he just started to understand what's going on.
Yeah, and it's crazy because people think that, oh, if you're depressed, you must definitely be aware of it. Or if you're an alcoholic, how could you not be aware of that? But
it's very hard to know, especially like for people who's depressed since childhood. We never had anything else. How do we know it's not normal?
You just think that that's normal life. And you often gravitate towards other depressed people because you have that in common and you have the same worldview.
Yeah, because
so you don't really realize.
Yeah, because you are an energy sucker when you're depressed, and all those normal people, like they were like, I have better choice. Yeah. And only those people who are also energy sucker, they stay with you.
And you can't relate to like normal people.
Yeah.
They're like, oh yeah, I woke up this morning today and like everything was cool, and then I went and did some yoga down by the parking. It's like, what the hell are you talking about? It just sounds like Ned Flanders or something from The Simpsons, you know? You're just like, what reality are you living in? Yeah, but I think if I would tell any, you know, I often watch these mental health videos where they have famous athletes who be like, man, I was depressed as fuck and I was doing cocaine and banging hookers and stuff. A lot of
Did
those.
you pay for the hookers?
I never had sex with a hooker. I don't believe. I do take donations, but I don't believe in paying for sex.
But did you pay for the prostitutes?
No. That's not what I'm saying. Is that there's always those famous athletes who list their intense dysfunctions, and they're like, "Oh, I was so depressed. I was doing cocaine, and there was like hookers and crazy bad decisions all around." I watch these videos, and there's always the part where the guy says, "This is what I've learned." So. What I learned from it and what actually the big breakthrough was for me, you know how I said before that people say, always look on the bright side? I'd struggled for years with what that actually means, and from my perspective, it means if you can gain some meaning from the suffering, then the suffering's not pointless. And then you can work out what good you got from the suffering, and then you can turn it into like a good thing. Like, for example, I was always like, I had a difficult childhood, and I always thought that it kind of like corrupted me or whatever, or it made me like there was something wrong with me that wasn't fixable. That's why I felt that way. So I always looked at it as a negative thing, but what my therapist helped me realize is actually these crazy experiences that I had was like this really difficult training, and these hard times that I went through, they gave me all of these benefits. Like, for example, I moved around a lot when I was a kid, so I had to say goodbye to my friends often. But now I have this ability to make friends, which I built this ability during that time. And now as an adult, I have like hundreds of really good friends in multiple countries, and people really love me and they want to be my friend, and I'm never really lonely.
Then why were you depressed?
Everything's fine, man. Like, no, I was depressed because I was worried about everything all the time, and worried about how my life could be ruined.
Yeah, it's how you process the information. Yeah.
And then there are these other things that came from this this really difficult time, and it allowed me to see that actually this may have been one of the best things that happened to me. There's nothing actually wrong with me, and I truly believed it. And I was like, I'm actually fine. Everything's just fine. There's no real problem. I'm good.
Your therapist sounds really good.
Yeah, it was the thing that changed my life. And now I'm sitting here, I'm like, man, like this was the number one issue for me for my entire, it was like this handicap, you know, it was like being in some sort of like mental wheelchair or something. And now the problem's basically solved, but it wasn't because I had this attitude I had to fix myself, but then it was more about, the therapy was more about getting to know myself better and finding out the good things about myself that I really love and what other people love about me. And that allowed me to make peace with the past. And then there's like this, for me it was as if the greatest analogy is it's like there's a civil war going on in your head. And normally in a civil war, there's two or more factions, and one of the factions are not being heard. They have this grievance with the government, like me, and they're not being heard. So they do all that they can to make as much noise as possible to get you to the negotiating table with them and to talk it out. Yeah. And that's basically the whole thing. But when I finally sat down with these like unresolved issues from the past and could see them for what they are and how the positive ways they affect me, the war was basically over right there. So when I do have freakouts now, they're much more isolated. Like I had the first one in 6 months, like in May, and now I'm good again. So we'll see what happens. But I'm not freaking out to the same degree and not to the same depth. So it was just basically with making peace with these things that happened. And now actually, this sounds crazy, and I say it to people, and I truly believe it, but I think honestly that I am privileged in a way that most other people I know are not. And I'm privileged because I've been through all this crazy shit, and I have all these lessons. Like if I have a friend who's having a hard time mentally, I can be like, well, I've played that level. You know, you want to, like, I can tell you this, and this, and I can help people, but also I know deep down inside that I've been through like extended periods of shitty times, to say the least, and I'm still here, and I'm not bitter and twisted, and it didn't destroy me, and I'm not, you know, I'm not like some crazy drug addict yelling at people on the S-Bahn or something, you know. So it could have really
probably
gone
at one point.
Mate, there is a lot of days I can't remember. Fuck. Yeah. So that would be, to be in a position where I'm at peace with it. I often wondered if I would ever have this day. I always thought things would get better, but I didn't.
I am so impressed. You made a really good progress, like just 6 months. You are really doing great.
Well, this is the thing. I try to tell my therapist, I'm like, dude, you should take some credit for this because this is crazy. And he's like, nah, you did all the work. And I was like, I've been doing all the work for like 30 years, man, and I had no improvement.
I think you really have the how do you say, drive, really want to get out of it, and with a little bit of help you made progress like super fast.
The alternative is basically like a slow suicide, because you get to the point where, and I've seen what happens to other people who are in this position, and it's not good.
Yeah.
And yeah, the therapist gave me like the tools, and he talked me through like therapy for some traumatic events that happened and kind of resolved them. But he was kind of like, if you're walking through this dark forest, he was kind of the guide leading me along and telling me what I needed to do. And I basically just followed the instructions. And it worked. So I was like, all right, fuck it. You're the expert. Let's just tell me what I need to do.
And I totally resonate with you. I have a very dark childhood also. And since I started to do comedy, especially since I started to do storytelling, I realized they are all my treasures. Like they are all like gold mine I can dig and then tell different stories. And I think it's how do you say, it's asset so valuable that most people can just, even they have money, they cannot have it. For example, the other day I was watching watching some like a rock concert, and then I realized, when you are at like a festival, like everyone singing together, and this kind of atmosphere is really energetic, really good experience. But then I realized I never had an experience like this because I grew up in China. We didn't have such thing. And then 10 years ago, I came to Europe to study. I was super lonely. I had no friends because I studied in business school. Everyone was posh. I was super poor. And I had no friends. I often don't talk with people for days, and then I live in a basement, and then there's no there's a language barrier. I lived in Netherlands, so I was so isolated. I was so sad, and I was thinking, how can I make me feel better? How about pay 200 euros, go to a rock festival alone with no friends in amount of rich white people, and then I feel better and I feel connected. Then I end up like a little bit overdose on ecstasy and puking, and end up with a group of random people, and they are all toxic with each other and have no place to stay. I went to this rock concert, this festival. I decided to stay 3 days, but I didn't have a tent. I didn't know how to camp.
Oh my God.
I didn't have anything with me. And in my mind at that time, I was like, I figured it out. I will make friends. So I never feel so lonely. Like, it's like I literally with thousands of people, but I feel so tremendously lonely. I had no money to buy all those festival food, and I have like no people I know in this festival, and I was like paid 200 euros. I come here, I want to make friends, I want to have a good time, but I end up crying, overdosing, puking, and this was horrible. It was so horrible, and like a week ago, I was watching TV. I was like, this made me realize how isolated, how lonely, how sad I was. And I realized that's why, for me, in my mind, a rock festival is the last thing related to fun. And then I was watching this documentary with like a Queen and their new member, and the amazing story, how cool, like everyone singing together. Then I realized, I had this horrible experience. But I'm the director of my own story. I can change the narrative. I can buy a fucking ticket and and to fulfill the dream I couldn't have 10 years ago. I can make rock concert a good memory, and I can treat myself again to erase this put this sadness chapter about the rock concert in the past by treating myself and giving myself a good experience. I can invite my friend and to go to a good concert and where I'm surrounded by people who love me and feel the connection. And that was not the end of the story. And in order to make a good story, you need contrast. Like for normal people, they can get to a high. Oh, I went to this amazing rock concert with my friends. I had the best time of my life. But how high it can go? Unless I have something like so low, and then the two things together, that's a great story.
Yeah, yeah. My God, I can only imagine how much that must have sucked.
Yeah.
Jesus. But yeah, so if you go there, if you basically like have round 2 and you like come back and like defeat this demon or whatever, and you kind of overlay that experience onto the shitty time, and then
I realized as a storyteller, just have all those shitty stories in the past. It's just a great beginning of a great story, because when it sunk to that low, then you tell them a climax, the contract. Great.
Yeah, and it's like the ultimate crisis point when you're like, for example, I'm at a festival, I don't know anyone, I'm overdosing on ecstasy and I'm puking, and this is like, I came at it, Jesus Christ, that's so, it sounds bad, but like that is tragic. So when you're watching that, that's like when Simba's dad dies in The Lion King, you know, like when Mufasa dies, and you're like, shit, this is fucked up, hopefully it comes back. But I think, like for me, the story of the mental illness story, how it went like, really shit, and then like, wow, I feel good again. Life seems like it's worth living, and I believe it now.
Yeah.
So this. I look back on a lot of the stories that I have. A lot of them I don't really tell because some people like, you know, they're like, oh my God, are you okay? And I'm like, I don't want you to feel bad for me. I just want you to understand it because part of it's funny or it's got a good lesson or whatever, but I don't like the, oh my God, Brendon, are you okay?
I think the point of this kind of story is that you shouldn't tell it yet, because lots of stories, like they are only in the beginning, they didn't end. You need to, like, you are the own director of your own movie. You need to wait a bit, make a redemption or make a peace with it and learn something or have a great experience to contrast it, and then tell it to your friends. They will be first crying, then will be then they wouldn't feel bad hearing it.
Yeah, and I guess if you don't have like the resolution part at the end, they're just going to be sitting there crying and be like, so is that the end? And you're like, well, you know, I guess so.
So I think it's nice, like now I slowly rediscover lots of memories, because when it's very painful, you kind of put it in a box, you just forget it, and slowly I rediscover them and try to think, okay, I have this memory, how can I make it a great story? What a resolution I should do, and to make it amazing.
Yeah, it's quite hard because you really have to examine a lot of the things and like, you know, go through these shitty experiences with a fine-tooth comb, but when you finally get to the point where you're like, haha, I've converted it into gold, like this feeling's great.
And you know, when you can make the resolution and when you tell this story, I'm doing this storytelling show, you know, right? I kind of feel I'm like a god. You know, I want to share this with you. During this episode of depression, I become spiritual. It's basically one day I was taking acid, and then I was puking, and I was watching Frozen, the movie. And when I was puking, and all I was thinking is, Frozen is an amazing movie. I'm a woman, I love myself. And then I was like, wow, this is really funny. Like a Chinese girl high on acid, puking and shouting, I love myself, I'm a princess. This is funny. Then I realized, oh my God, no matter what happens to me in life, like sad thing, like depressed thing happen in my life doesn't mean I need to feel depressed. I'm the own narrator. How do you narrator of my own story. So I have these comedy skills. I can make it funny. Then when it's funny, when I use the raw material of life, produce some jokes, then I don't feel sad. I don't feel depressed. I feel, oh, this is a great experience. I had jokes. Then suddenly it kicked in me. I was like, I feel like God is part in me. Like God gives me these skills to create, to change the narrative and to inspire. And I just feel the connection suddenly. And since then, the connection never left me. And with storytelling, I feel I'm kind of like God. God is in me. And when I tell a story, I'm just playing with people's emotions. Like I always, many stories, like they cry, they laugh, and they feel miserable, they feel sorry. Then and then suddenly I put them out of it, and then they cry, and with their nose water in their mouth, they were like, it's funny. And then they leave. You realize their whole emotion was purely played by my words. I'm like a conductor of emotions, and this feels amazing. And without all those shitty things happening to me, I wouldn't be able to push them into this like crying point. Then the laughing, smiling point wouldn't feel so good afterwards. So I kind of like feel what you said. The things happening to us all have a purpose. It makes us stronger, and as performers ourselves, it's an invaluable asset.
Yeah, and that is like the meaning in the suffering.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that it helps. Everybody has like their own little like interpretation of reality, but when you can bring people together and make them kind of feel the same things, like together, then it like proves the bonding of the group. And yeah, I think this is why I love telling stories, because you realize that they're everywhere. Like everything that we have, how we understand reality is there's a story of some kind. Oh,
Yes.
like, oh, there was the Big Bang.
That's how human evolved also. Like we didn't have how do you say, a written language. We pass on information, pass on our culture by telling stories.
Yeah. And being like, yeah, man, I feel the way you do. You're not alone in this. And one thing I've noticed is that humans, we hate to be alone, especially in our thoughts. When I found out that other people were having like anxiety and stuff, I thought like, man, it sucks for you that you feel that way. But on the other hand, at least I'm not alone with this shit.
Yeah. And I think with all the bad things happening to us, I think I feel our work is extra meaningful because we are not just joke tellers. We convey message. We make people realize they are not alone. And for example, if we can, or me, for myself, if I can tell a story and some people realize, oh, I'm not weird, and this is not my fault, and it's normal. Yeah. And encourage someone to go to see a therapist, then I feel, oh, my life is meaningful, my work is meaningful. Actually, I did. I only have 15 episodes of the podcast so far. I already know that because of this project, some comedians, they are motivated to deal with some trauma in their past, and they for 20 years they couldn't process, and they start to talk with people involved, they start to talk with their parents, and I feel, wow, that's the meaning of my work and my life, and this is amazing.
Yeah, for real. Like when you asked me if I would like to do this, I thought, yeah, this would be a really wholesome, good, helpful thing to do for people, because I imagine, like, for years people were telling me, like, dude, go to therapy, man. Yeah. And like I just didn't do it. And then eventually I was convinced because things got really bad. But I think there's a lot of people out there right now who are having the, is it bad enough to go to therapy debate? Should I go to therapy? Oh, I don't know, but I guess if we have more episodes like this and more people talking, because I don't know how I appear to people. I don't know if I appear to be this guy who's, normally when I'm doing comedy, I'm like 4 beers deep and I smoke cigarettes and the things I talk about, I've been told they're pretty crazy. But so I don't know if I appear to be a guy who has his shit together, but I would like to think that I'm reasonably sensible about a lot of things. So if I'm saying, oh, just give therapy a try, maybe it would help somebody.
And how did you start to do comedy?
To do what? To do comedy. Oh, shit. So this happened in 2016. So this friend, this German guy that I met in Australia, when I first came to Berlin, I was just here for the summer of awesome times. And then in 2016, I had a working holiday visa. And I developed this kind of like an inferiority complex because everybody around me was like a photographer, a musician, a dancer or a model or a DJ or this or that. And I was like, shit, I don't really have any skills. Like, what do I do? And a friend of mine was like, every time we're chilling, I'm always cracking up. Like, he's always laughing at something I say. At parties, I'm always telling stories, blah, blah, blah. And it was just something that I've always done. I've always been just this big shit talker. And through all the jobs I've had, I've always just been like the funny guy. Not like a class clown, but like kind of just making fun of things. And he was like, you know, you should really try stand-up comedy. And I was like, wow, no way, man. That looks crazy. And then it took about 3 or 4 months. And I was all right, you've convinced me, fuck it. And so I signed up at Cosmic Comedy. And Darmander was like, all right, man, you got 5 minutes. And I told the story about how the first time, you know, here in the east of Germany, they have the FKK, like the people being naked. Me and my friend and his girlfriend, we're all really close, right? We went to this lake and we're running toward the water and no one told me anyone was going to get naked, right? And I wasn't expecting this at all. And for me, in my culture, nakedness is generally like, A, you're a kid, or B, if you're an adult, you're either at the doctor or there's something sexual going on. It's basically those are your options, right?
So you don't have like a naked beach there?
We do, but it's like a naked beach and a lot of people are like, yeah, they're kind of weird people. We call them nudist colonies, like a seal colony or something. But so yeah, we went running toward the water, and his girlfriend started undressing while she was running, and I was like, I don't know how to do. What the fuck? And I just turned around and ran back to the car.
Did you have a boner?
No, I didn't. I had like the opposite of you know. Sometimes you get terrified and your dick like shrinks back into your body. It was like that, and like they thought it was hilarious. And then so I told this story because. Every time I was at a party, I would be telling the story to people because it's crazy. Like, I'm not supposed to see my best friend's girlfriend's vagina. This is a no-go. You shouldn't be in this position ever. And then I was suddenly in this position. So things like that are pretty funny. Like, be like, oh my God, freak out and actually run back to the car and stay at the car until they get back. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, now I don't care, but at the time. So anyway, I did this story at Cosmic Comedy and then I kind of got hooked on it. Like, first of all, it was just this huge adrenaline rush. Like, I would get home and I couldn't sleep until 4 a.m. Even if the show sucked and I just failed really bad, I was still like, wow, fuck, I did that. I'd normally smoke like 2 joints and drink like 5 or 6 beers just so I could sleep after a show because I loved it. And then when it went well, or even half well, I would just obsessively watch the video over and over and over again. And I thought like, yeah, like that really showed me that storytelling and making people laugh is the skill that I've had my whole life, but I never really realized that because it was just there all the time. And then this inferiority complex went away as well because I was like, oh, I have my thing, you know? I tell the stories.
Cool, that's amazing. And my last question. Which one is your favorite stand-up comedy special?
Man, when I was 14, I discovered Dave Chappelle, and I got obsessed with. I watched Killing Them Softly and For What It's Worth. Because this is when YouTube first came out, so someone had uploaded, and I watched both of those continuously. So it would be
Both.
Yeah, basically both.
Wow.
Yeah, I remember I just remember how like funny it was and how clever it was, and like because I had grown up watching comedy like Billy Connolly and Robin Williams and Jim Carrey, and I thought that was like cool. But then when I heard Dave Chappelle, I was like, wow, this is the shit. And I remember going to school and I'd memorize parts, and I would stand on this like little like bench seat, and during lunchtime and like recite parts of it to my friends. And every time I see this, I'm just like, man, that was, because I really cracked up to the point where I couldn't breathe. Yeah. And the other one I really love is I really got obsessed with Borat, like the first movie that came out in 2006. I went to the movies and watched it with me and my two really good friends. I spent the whole movie just cracking up, and then I started watching it. I watch it like once a year. Sometimes twice, and I know the whole script, so he's like walking through and I'm just like doing like the I love this. There's so many scenes where I was like, this is like the time when he goes to the antique shop and he slips over and just starts knocking over all that shit, and then he tries to pay with like money and like pubic hair, and the dude's just like, what the fuck is this? And I think the absurdity of comedy is what I really love. Could you imagine being in that situation? You show up to work, normal day, you got your antique shop, and then this craziness breaks out, and then it just keeps getting crazier, and the guy's like, yeah, I have some of the hair, it's 100% human. It's like, what? So I think those two things at roughly the same time, yeah, I just loved doing impressions of people and telling stories, and yeah.
I thank you for the recommendations and for doing this. This
Thanks
is amazing.
for inviting me.
And thank you for telling me hair doctor knows about me.
I'm gonna check some, because I think you guys would get along pretty well, and yeah, it was so weird because I was like, oh, that's Moni, and he was like, oh, you know Moni, and I was like, yeah, from the comedy. Fuck. It's crazy. It's a
So
small
how
world.
how he like introduced you?
Okay, this was like 6 months ago, but he was like, oh, there's this name of this platform. It's complicated.
Dot tire or something?
No, it's complicated. That's the name.
Oh, okay.
And he was like, I have a profile on It's Complicated or something, where people can get help with mental health services. Then there's some sort of connection between that and your podcast. Maybe he recommended it at the same time. He was like, these are two things you could maybe use.
Wow, that's amazing, because 6 months ago I will have like 1-2 episodes.
Yeah, maybe it was somewhere between like 3 and 6 months ago. And is there some sort of platform that this podcast gets uploaded to?
Maybe, like it gets uploaded to many places.
Okay, because I remember in the conversation there's some connection between the platform he was using and the one that this is, like there's something in common, but I can't remember.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
But I'll
Hair
tell him.
doctor, danke, vielen Dank. Recommend me to more people, thank you. Danke.
He's Dutch, but I'm sure he'll understand.
Okay. I'm sorry.
It's the same word in Dutch.
Oh,
It's the same word in Dutch.
Dutch food sucks. I'm sorry,
I
hair
think it's
doctor.
dankje or something in Dutch. I don't know. Dutch is just crazy English.
Cool. Let's say goodbye to our audience.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Have fun.
Have fun. Do you have anything to say to them?
Yeah, drinking and drugs are not the answer. They'll help you for a little while, but you'll probably go to therapy.
Yeah. Stay alive, stay healthy. Also you, hair doctor. Bye bye.
Bye.